For 10 months, pupils at Sydney's Pittwater High staged raffles, manned stalls and lobbied local businesses, raising $85,000 to go solar.
We could no longer sit on our hands and hope that others would do something about global warming.
We're certainly not in for the money. In fact, it's a very, very expensive exercise, and we are a public comprehensive high school.
Photovoltaic or PV panels run 10 classrooms, and during the holidays the school hopes to feed electricity into the grid, eventually powering the surrounding suburb.
If a school can do this, so can a hospital, so can a shopping centre, so can a factory.
But Australia lags behind other countries in offering incentives for schools, hospitals or factories to feed solar power into the grid. Woolworth's main liquor distribution centre in Western Sydney has been purpose-built to carry $8 million worth of PV panels. But the leading food chain says it won't invest in them until there's a financial return.
The numbers don't stack up financially for a commercial operator as a viable investment.
What's really important for the solar industry is driving scale. And what's going to deliver that is not only the residential rooftops, but also the commercial rooftops.
Into individual ratings for power efficiency.
At Australia's only commercial PV manufacturing plant, 85% of the solar panels produced are for export.
We really have the potential to emerge as a solar nation. But to do that, we need the right policy support.
What we need to do is build the market to bring the price down. So we have to give a genuine incentive.
South Australia is the first state to offer that generation incentive, the so-called feed-in tariff.
It's going to, build up a nice little credit.
Like the pupils of Pittwater High, Jeanette and Henry Lucas wanted to do their bit for global warming. So they invested in solar for their Adelaide home. From July, they'll be paid twice the electricity rate for any excess solar power they feed into the grid.
If we don't take action, we don't have credibility in preaching to others, and that's why a small state like South Australia is taking the lead, and I'm really pleased that other states are following.
But even this, say critics, is tokenism.
Why should people install additional solar cells just to supply the grid at additional cost to themselves? It doesn't really make sense.
Whilst South Australia was the first to table or pass legislation, it's on a model, a 2% net model, that I have to say I honestly don't believe will work.
The ACT's Chief Minister backs legislation based on Germany's example, where both homes and businesses are paid at nearly 4 times the standard rate for all the electricity they produce.
In less than 6 years, we've seen that market grow from about 100 megawatts to over 1 gigawatt. So that's growth of 10 times. It's extraordinary for a country that's less sunny than Australia.
Back at Pittwater High, Principal Cusworth is frustrated no such incentive is offered to his school.
I feel disadvantaged. I feel that our own government needs to do a lot more.
I congratulate Pittwater High School. What a magnificent initiative. Isn't that fantastic that they're caring so much about their climate and that they're educating their kids to care about the climate? And I would say to them, we don't consider the status quo acceptable.
But New South Wales, the state with the largest carbon footprint, is still hoping for a uniform national approach.
If we introduced feed-in tariffs on the gross amount of solar electricity fed into the grid, we would see the solar industry expanding really rapidly.
It's baseload electricity generation, however, that really matters. And it's in California that the big investment is being made in large-scale solar thermal.
Well, it's an absolute frenzy. We're seeing massive projects now being announced, of the order of $1 billion each, every few weeks.
For David Mills, a fairy tale is coming true. Last year, the Sydney University professor reluctantly packed his bags for the US, seeking investment for his technology. In 12 months, he's become a world-leading solar thermal entrepreneur, and he's not the only one.
I'd say that at least 3 or 4 of these companies will have about $3 to $5 billion in orders by the end of this year.
Construction of Mill's first $500 million energy storing plant in California begins soon. A pilot plant already exists in the New South Wales Hunter Valley. David Mills claims this technology, on a larger scale, could generate almost all of Australia's baseload power.
Solar thermal can be the big gorilla on the grid. As long as it has storage, and storage is the key, we can supply over 90% of Australia's generation from this source on a continuing basis with no fuel.
I'm saying, come and build it, David, come and build it. We are committed to feed-in tariffs. We're committed to supporting the national...
The thing is that you don't have a feed-in tariff for even domestic solar yet.
Well, I would argue that the policy settings that are now in place, both at the federal level and at the state level, will provide David Mills with a whole lot more incentives.
Driving California's boom is a renewable energy target of 33% by 2020, far higher than Australia's 20%, and many other incentives.
The new technologies need a hand up. They have to get up to size. And when we try to build, say, we want to build a gigawatt plant, well, the banks say, well, you've never built one before, therefore we're going to charge you a high interest rate because you look risky. What can the government do? In that case, it would be very easy for the government to put a loan guarantee in for a new plant. All those kinds of little things can help this industry get up off the ground really quickly. And if they are in place, as the United States has shown and Spain has shown, they rocket.
The key question for Australia is keeping the R&D in Australia, keeping the commercialisation and the development and the intellectual property here.
But without those incentives, other large-scale projects like Wizard Power's plan to use ANU big dish technology to run the South Australian town of Whyalla just won't take off.
Putting in place the sort of incentives, feed-in tariffs and so on that we've been talking about will mean that the bankability of that project will go from a probability to a certainty.
It's the same story with the ANU's Sliver technology, groundbreaking photovoltaics that use 1/10 of the costly silicon of a normal solar cell. Origin Energy has spent $40 million developing it to what it describes as the cusp of commercialisation. Will it too go overseas?
We'd like very much to keep this product and this project in Australia. Australia is well based with manufacturing skills and IP base, so there are a lot of things going for Australia, but ultimately it's a global market.
Time is rapidly running out, says David Mills, for Australia's place in the sun.
We have to get moving, and we have to actually not only apply similar incentives to what is going on overseas, but to attract attention, to get our industry ahead. We have to really put in place more sophisticated and better incentives to get these plants in place very quickly.